Hello, here we are. More snow for our long weekend as we head into our family day long weekend. A welcomed extra day of rest for those of you who are not working. And if you're not working, it can be one of those PJs and slipper day where you can sit and binge on your favorite show and even eat snacks in bed. Or you can head out into the city, explore, take a hike, and visit the different sites. So our family is on holiday this week, but we are continuing our series on blind religion. And I have two short videos for you today. The first video is a little bit different because there won't be a teacher or a preacher, but you'll see a group of people. People from very different walks of life discussing religion. And half of the people, they are religious, and the other half, they are non-religious scientists. So on the religious side, we have three people. We have a pastor, a Buddhist monk, and a rabbi who happens to be an atheist. And then on the science camp, we have three scientists. One is a volcanologist, the other is a chemist, and the third is a paleontologist. So a very diverse group of people with very different worldviews. But they're brought together to discuss some of the big questions about life. So you might have come across this YouTube channel called Jubilee, and they create a show called Middle Ground. And Isaiah told me about this channel, and they have great shows with great video quality. And this show brings up a lot of sensitive issues that we often avoid talking about. Things like mental health, or racism, or religion, or politics. And on this show, whether you are a liberal or a conservative, Christian or anti-vaxxer, everyone gets a chance to talk about their views. So you'll see a dim room with a group of people from opposing views. A spotlight will come on in the middle of the room, and then a statement is read out. If you agree with the statement, then these participants will step forward, sit down in a circle, and explain the reasoning why they agree with the statement. And after this step, those who oppose the statement, they're allowed to step forward to explain their reasons for opposing the statement. And then in the final step, both groups come together to have a conversation. And you will see a very live discussion because the viewpoints and opinions are so varied. And the Pastor Matt, is the only Christian of the six. And he mostly finds himself at odds with the group, especially those who don't share his biblical worldview. And the scientists, of course, they are committed to a naturalistic, materialistic worldview where God and the supernatural, it falls outside of their realm of thinking. So in their minds, faith in a supernatural God is blind. It's blind because God cannot be really proved or tested or measured. So as you watch the video, try to imagine yourself in the circle. How would you respond to these statements? And after all, in real life, you may be the only Christian in your workplace, in your classroom, or on your street. So you're going to need to put on your thinking caps because it's not going to be an easy walk in the park today, because I want you to think and engage. I want you to think about how your faith operates and makes sense of this real world that we're living in with so many different opinions and worldviews. And as a Christian, how does faith and reason fit into this world? A pure rationalist will say truth can only be determined by reason and facts. There's no space for faith and religious thinking. So question, is faith and reason two separate categories? They don't intersect, or can they both exist together? Personally, I've never really had any conflict between faith and reason. I don't feel that having faith is blind at all. God gave me a brain to think, to analyze, and to reason with. I believe that Christianity is able and has been able to stand up against intellectual scrutiny down through our time. Very smart people, scholars and philosophers and theologians throughout history, they have thought long and hard about these issues. And The libraries across the globe, they're filled with tens of thousands of volumes written about God and faith. And these are significant records of deep, deep thinkers. So one cannot just come along and simply dismiss this long history without thoughtful consideration. Ancient people were not less intellectual or less reasonable than us. In fact, some of them were much more reasonable than what we see today. They were just as skeptical and as rational as people today. Personally, I think faith is at the foundation of rationality. I believe that all human knowledge and reason is dependent on some form of faith. For example, you have to have faith in your own senses, in your own mind to think and reason, and to have faith in yourself. And adding to this conversation, you'll see a second video from Bishop Robert Barron. He is a smart, articulate man of faith. And he's a bishop in the Catholic Church, and he serves in Santa Barbara, California. And he is a scholar, having written many books and articles. And he's watched by millions of people every single year. And I really enjoy listening to him because he's sharp and articulate. As a theologian, he speaks in a way that makes sense of faith for everyday Christians. And in his short talk, he explains how faith in God isn't blind, but it's both rational and reasonable. So I hope that these two videos will encourage you, they'll challenge you and stir your hearts and minds to engage with your faith. So I hope your connection time together, and I pray that this extended weekend will be a blessing. I will see you guys all next week. Have a great discussion and conversation. Blessings to all of you.
My name is Matt. I'm 41 years old. I'm a pastor.
I'm Gil Kay. I'm 40 years old. I am a minister of the Buddhist church.
I'm Andrew. I'm 42 and I'm a chemist.
I'm Jess. I'm 36 and I'm a volcanologist.
I'm Don. I'm 64. I'm a paleontologist and geologist.
I'm Amy. I'm 53 and I'm a rabbi.
I believe this universe was created.
This is literally my greatest fear, that I'd be all alone in this circle. I believe that this world was created. I've placed my faith in a God that is infinitely creative in what He's made. He then deserves my worship and my affection. Seriously, last night I was talking to my wife. I was like, what if there's a question that I'm the only one that agrees to? She's like, just stay where you are. I was like, I don't know.
The big problem is that immediately you start talking about creator, and I've battled creationism most of my entire career as an evolutionary biologist and paleontologist. It brings in a whole category of things that violate my rules as a scientist as well. And when I step back from that, especially when I step back from where I started as a religious person when I was younger, I look at this and I say, you know, if anything, what we see now about the universe shows how poorly designed it is and how sloppy it is and how painful it is. And all these things which don't speak to a very benevolent creator, because if anything, it makes him look bad.
I don't believe in a supernatural God. I'm a Reconstructionist Jew. For me, I don't rely on a supernatural creator in order to remain astounded at the beauty of this world that's sloppy. It's the world, right? It's the world. We're sloppy, the world is sloppy, but it's also incredibly magical and worthy of awe and respect. And that it's here is amazing, that we're here is amazing, and I want to live in relationship to that amazement.
Science can answer moral questions.
I never look to science to go like, is murder right or wrong? I look to science to say how many murders were committed last week. You know, that's what I want to know. And then say, is there a trend? What is the cause of these murders? Blah, blah, blah. And then we use, we use different tools, I guess is the best way of putting it, to assess whether or not we should be murdering people.
Where do those morals come from then?
I think they're innate in humans. All societies have had certain things they agree on, regardless of religious background and so on. We don't require a deity or any kind of religion to give us those things. We come with them as part of our species. And for me, it's not so much that science can answer moral questions, but science certainly can guide us in a lot of ways, especially when moral questions in conflict with reality as we've now learned it.
There are things that my beliefs cannot explain.
I've got serious gaps in my faith that require a supernatural answer. I mean, I can't understand and fathom the complexities of the universe all on my own. I'm a Christian. At a church service, someone had a hurt shoulder, and they said, my shoulder really hurts, so you pray for my shoulder to get better. I'll be honest with you, I have about 5% faith that that's going to work out. But I prayed for him, I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, I want this shoulder to get healed in Jesus' name. And I walked away thinking, oh no, another disappointed person who didn't get healed today. Well, the next morning that person called me and said, you wouldn't believe it, my shoulder feels 100% better. I still don't have a good answer to that, but I just know every time I get an answer or an opportunity to exercise my faith in a supernatural way, I want to take that opportunity because I just don't know what the answer might be. It could be something terrific.
I totally agree with you. I liked you when you said 5%. I pretty much feel the same way, yeah. But in my hometown in Japan, we have this kind of service to sort of console the spirits in the land. Like when we chant for an hour, half an hour maybe, then everybody feels, it feels so peaceful. But then I can't quite explain it, logically. And that's sufficient in that situation.
Science is all about understanding what we can understand, and in science you're pretty much not allowed to even consider the supernatural because it's beyond testable hypothesis. It's beyond anything that you can evaluate in any what we might call an objective manner. We are comfortable with the idea that we do not know something, and we say we do not know something, and that someday we might find the answer or we may not.
There's a lot out there that we can't explain, but it has absolutely nothing to do with my beliefs. I was raised Catholic, and I'm just as confused now as I was then about what's really going on. There is this small amount of stuff we can explain. I don't need to have a belief about it. I don't even need to go beyond that and just to decide that it's magnificent and terrifying all at the same time, and just kind of leave it at that.
So I think your answer to the question would have been yes. I mean, because I think you might agree that there's stuff that you can't even know to test yet. Right. So maybe there's something beyond scientific theory and proof that we don't even know yet. And I'm not saying God.
Okay.
If we just take God out of it, might there not be something,
certainly,
right, that your scientific beliefs can't explain?
That's right, certainly. But also in my philosophy, I don't see any point in putting any kind of supernatural label on it as an explanation. It's just not solving the problem.
I believe in life after death.
Well, I'm so glad you're with me because I didn't want to be here all by myself. I just see purpose for our lives that extends beyond the here and now, that there is an eternity that God wants to have with us. His love for us is so deep that it desires to have a continued relationship with us as far as time goes on.
Because I live in Long Beach, I go down to the beach and I see the waves in the ocean. At the beach, they come ashore and they leave. We compare that to life. We take different shapes and different forms, and the length of the wave, we have no idea. You show up in different locations, which you have no control. The idea that this momentarily shape that we have, this life, and trying to preserve it, and then we're kind of missing the whole point that we are actually that greater ocean.
In my limited capacity as a individual human, like in this form, in this shape, I have no idea. How can I possibly have any idea about what that being ocean is going to mean or be? And so I know that I will continue to be part of the universe, but not as me, not as this.
I would agree with that. I mean, I see no evidence from anything that I can observe or anything that goes on, that it's more than just wishful thinking that humans in some form are going to exist in some afterlife where they're recognizable and their identities carry on.
When I was a kid, I asked my dad if our pets would be waiting for us in heaven when we died, and my dad said no, and I was shocked, and I was like, why would there not be pets in heaven? And my dad's like, well, there are animals, and I'm like, why not my animals? And he's like, well, they're just like a generic cat and a generic dog. And I went, wait, what? And so at that point, that's when I started to question, like, wait a minute, what happens next? And yeah, I'm kind of, with a lot of you guys here, just saying that, look, wouldn't it be great if we could go on and on and on? But I think because we don't see any evidence for it, I have to be in the camp of, well, we get this one shot, make the most of it, do the best you can, and then when it's done, don't have any regrets. Live with doing as much as you could that is good, so that you will live on in the memories of those who stay behind.
I'm so sorry your dad told you your dog's not going to heaven. What a crushing thing to hear as a child. All good dogs go to heaven.
That's what the movie said.
It must be true.
I think he was trying to let me down gently, but
I
don't
know, yeah.
Like some days, I'm like totally zen. I'm totally there. Like it's okay. It's all one, and I will just not exist. I'm usually not as afraid of death as I am of dying. Like I'm afraid of dying because I've seen some really bad dying. I'm very afraid of pain and of the process of dying. But
I lost both my parents from cancer, so I witnessed both process. My mom died over 30 years ago, and it was painful to witness that my mom kind of health deteriorate. My dad went through the same process, but then he was once writing letters as it just really coincides with Buddhist teachings that I'm having a wonderful day, and I'm really grateful for everybody who support us. We have a saying that every day is, as you say, the greatest day. I can see that, intellectually, I can understand it intellectually, but I just wasn't sure if I could feel if I would be able to say something like that if I'm put in that situation.
It's important to question one's own beliefs.
Man, I'm such a skeptic, and that includes questioning my own beliefs, especially if I form a hypothesis and I'm working on an experiment. I mean, you always kind of want it to go a certain way, and you have to do your best to remove that bias, and then a lot of times if you're in research, it just doesn't work.
One of the things I tell students, because I work with students a lot with my nonprofit organization, and I tell them, as they're journeying into becoming scientists, and they come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and I just say, look, don't ever work with anyone who's afraid to admit that they don't know something or that they're wrong. Like, those are really important qualities, whether it's in science or any aspect of life. The whole fun in being a scientist is trying to break things. And I actually wanted to start a journal of scientific mistakes so that we could share with each other what went wrong. Because too often we only talk about the successes. And I think it's very valuable to also know what failure is and what it teaches us.
And the questioning is such a healthy thing. I always think it's a healthy thing. So whenever I see younger monastics or priests, like, yeah, go ahead and question me or question what you do, and then be okay. And you need to understand intellectually, but at the same time, I want you to understand there are things that's beyond this intellectual understanding. So that's unrecognizable part of understanding that comes only through experience.
Good job. Nice meeting you. Very interesting stuff.
really interesting.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. So good to meet you too.
There's a reading for the Easter season that I think is very important for this question of faith and reason. And I've said that in my work here on YouTube, one of the major objections that comes up is precisely along these lines. That what we call faith is just unreasonable. It's just old pre-scientific nonsense. Believing in Bronze Age mythology. It's falling for any old fairy story, etc., right? That's all faith is. It's irrational. Well, this story now, toward the end of John's Gospel, about doubting Thomas, I think sheds a lot of light on this issue. Let me just read a little bit. You know it well, but I'll read a little bit in the beginning. Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So Jesus came in the room, but Thomas wasn't there. So the other disciples said to him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, put my finger into the nail marks, put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Okay, the famous doubting Thomas. Now, what do we make of this? Well, this proves, that questions are bad, that you should just have faith and not ask questions. No, that's the wrong way to think about it. The Catholic tradition loves questions. I'll give you one indication why. Mary hears the Annunciation from the angel. What does she say? "How's this possible? For I've had no relations with a man." She's asking a very good, honest question. Mary also, we hear, pondered these things in her heart. She took in the data of revelation, but didn't just dumbly take it in. She reflected on it, asked questions about it, pondered it in her heart. It makes her the model of all theology. Or think of the namesake of this ancient figure. His namesake from the Middle Ages, Thomas Aquinas. Read any 2 pages of Thomas Aquinas, anything he ever wrote, what do you find? Question upon question upon question, including in the beginning of the Summa Theologiae, this famous question, Utrum Deus sit, which means whether there's a God. Now I submit to you, if you can ask that question, you can ask any question in theology. The Catholic tradition never says don't ask questions. It loves questions, welcomes them. Here's a reason why. We don't hold to the fide sola principle, which is a Reformation principle, by faith alone. We hold to the fides et ratio tradition, faith and reason. Or to go back to St. Anselm, fides quaerens intellectum, faith seeking understanding. We don't drive a wedge between faith and reason. We don't say you have to put reason to sleep to have faith. No. See, here's the thing. Authentic faith is never infra-rational. I mean, lower than reason. That's credulity. That's superstition. What everyone on YouTube is always going after. I agree with you. I would say to my YouTube friends, I agree with you. I'm against superstition too. If you're accepting, you're surrendering something now that's infra-rational, forget it. That's childish. Faith isn't that though. Authentic faith is, as I've said before, supra-rational. It's a surrender, yes, but on the far side of reason. Reason having done all its work, now there's a surrender to a reality which I can't, even in principle, control, but one that beguiles me from the far side of reason, if I can put it that way. Now, you can use a lot of examples. The best one, the best analogy for this is falling in love. So when you are attracted to someone, so a young man's attracted to a young woman, he'll watch her, he'll maybe ask her friends about her, he'll investigate, maybe he'll Google her name and find out where she was educated and her background, etc. If he's like Sherlock Holmes, very observant and very skilled in deduction, he might be able to determine a lot about her based on that. But he'll never know her heart, really, until he sits down with her and she, of her own free will, opens her heart and opens her mouth and speaks. At which point he has to make a decision. Do I believe her? Do I surrender to this revelation beyond anything I can grasp on my own? And see, that's why we speak of someone falling in love. If all you're doing is controlling the process, well, you're never going to fall in love. You might be a acquaintance of that person, but you'll never be an intimate of that person. So with faith, there's a lot we can know about God on the basis of our reflection, our observation of the world, our philosophical musings. Read Thomas Aquinas. You'll find out all you can know about God philosophically. But then finally there's a surrender on the far side of reason. And that's authentic faith, And that's why the Catholic Church never puts questions to bed, but it resists a rationalism that is aggressive and controlling. Now, with that in mind, go back to Didymus, to St. Thomas, right? Listen again to him. "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger into the nail marks and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Is it wrong to question? No. But is it wrong to be so aggressive in one's rationalism that one wants utterly to control the situation? Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because you'll never get God that way. God can't be gotten that way with our grasping, self-asserting minds. In that sense, faith goes beyond reason. Doesn't put it to sleep, doesn't negate it or marginalize it, but it goes beyond it, you know. And that's part of the story of Thomas, because the Lord, when he comes back and he appears, he says to Thomas, well, good, put your finger in the wounds, put your hand in my side. But then he adds, blessed are those who have not seen and believe. See, who's really blessed? Those who don't have to control it with their rationalistic minds, but who are willing to surrender on the far side of reason. And just a last thought about this. I think it's very important that Thomas didn't see the Lord when he was away from the 12, right? He's away from the apostolic band. But when he comes back with them, that's when he sees the Lord. What's the lesson? The lesson is we get the Lord in the church. It's in the community of the church, that collection of believers in Jesus across space and time, where we understand him, where we get him in the fullest sense. One of the ways not to get him is to stay outside the church. And again, here I think of a lot of my friends on YouTube, you know, even those so-called or self-professed agnostics and atheists who stubbornly come back to my website over and over again and ask religious questions and challenge what I'm saying. Well, see, whether they admit it or not, they're hungry and thirsty for God. It's obvious in every word they write, you know. But the problem is they're seeking Christ. They're seeking God apart from the church. And what's going to happen is your questions and answers are going to get skewed. The best way to see him, so you're able to say with St. Thomas, my Lord and my God, the best way to do that is to stay within this rich, spirit-led interpretive tradition that we call the church.